submit a memorandum on various aspects of digital migration. So this presentation will look at the adequacy of the policy and legal framework under which migration was implemented and whether the legal reforms were undertaken as required by the Digital Migration Policy of 2014. We'll also look at the status of the migration and whether it was implemented according to the stipulations of the Digital Migration Policy, the intended benefits of the digital migration, challenges, if any, and recommendations on the way forward. So looking at the adequacy of the policy and regulation framework under which digital migration was implemented and whether reforms were undertaken is as follows. The digital migration process in Zambia was guided by the Digital Migration Policy of 2014, which was implemented under the auspices of the Ministry of Media and Broadcasting then, which is now the Ministry of Information and Media Services. The policy sought to ensure that all broadcasting services that are delivered through analog technologies are fully replicated on digital broadcasting technologies with the aim of switching off the analog broadcasting services at a specific point in time. The policy was adequate insofar as it relates to the digital migration process, as it provided a foundation for the migration process by outlining the objectives and guidelines for implementation. Further, the policy identified broad goals and was aligned with the IT recommendations and the SADC frameworks on digital migration. As regard to law reforms, although the Information and Communication Technologies Act of 2009 was not amended following the issuance of the policy, the ICT license regulatory framework was adopted to ensure that there were specific licensing categories for broadcasting signal distributors. Specifically, the licensing framework was revised to make it technology neutral. This led to the revocation of the ICT fees regulation SI number 34 of 2010 and replacement thereof with the ICT 3.2 in the mode of collection of TV levy to subscription management service. This was made possible after the implementation of the digital migration project, which facilitated for subscribers management service. This undertaking addressed in part the legal reforms required that there should be a separation between content provisions and signal distribution. Furthermore, ZNBC Act and the IBA Act are currently undergoing review with view of repeal and replacing them in order to adequately address the creation of the national public content service provider separate from the public signal distributor. The bills have since been submitted to Ministry of Justice for legislative drafting and will soon be presented to National Assembly for consideration. What is the current status of the digital migration, and was it implemented according to the stipulation of the policy? The transition from analog to digital broadcasting in Zambia was initiated under the guidance of the policy as stated, which outlined objectives, timelines, and implementation strategies. Currently, following aspects of the digital migration have been completed according to the policy. The migration has freed up portions of the analog spectrum, particularly in 700 MHz and 800 bands. ZICTA reviewed the frequency licensing and revoked all analog frequencies by switch off date and assigned frequencies only to licensed digital distributors. ZICTA licensed 2 signal distributed by issuance of network license. The license conditions for network licenses include coverage, obligations for the public signal distributor to ensure universal access. ZICTA issued network licenses for the establishment of the public and private signal distributor as stipulated in the policy. The private distribution license was issued through a competitive price process. All private broadcasters were carried onto the public network for free for a period of 6 months in line with the policy. Lastly, in addition, the Zambia National Digital Migration Project included additional works which comprised of the construction of provincial radio studios. However, these works have not been fully completed, with outstanding works which include completion of civil works in 8 provincial centers. That is completion of 3 provincial studios, which is Kabwe, Pata, and Mongo, National Operations Center, and the supply and installation equipment for National Operations Center, and 9 provincial studios. What were the intended benefits of digital migration, and how many have been achieved so far? So, with regards to the intended benefits of the digital migration, as outlined under the International Telecommunication Union, resolution of Geneva 2006, digital migration projects, the following have been achieved. Efficient spectrum use. This is where digital broadcasting makes more efficient use of their valuable spectrum, freeing up bandwidth with other important services. As stated above, this benefit has been realized by freeing up higher value spectrum in 800 HMZ and 700 HMZ bands that are now being used to deploy 4G mobile services, facilitating greater network capacity, high data speeds, and more reliable connectivity. There's been improved picture and sound quality. Digital migration, which aims to enhance the quality of television broadcasts as it provides better video and audio quality compared to analog. Thus far, we have reviewed that these objectives have been largely achieved as viewers now experience clearer images and better sound. Increased channel availability. One of the key benefits of digital broadcasting is the ability to offer more channels within the same bandwidth. This goal has been successfully achieved by providing the public with a wide array of programming and services that include channels, HD offering, and radio. What are some of the challenges then that were faced during the implementation? One of the challenges was the vast rural coverage. Establishing the necessary digital broadcasting infrastructure across Zambia's vast and diverse terrain posed a significant challenge. This included setting up of digital transmitters and ensuring adequate signal coverage, particularly in the remote areas of rural areas. The initial funding constraint. There was a delay in securing initial funding to implement the digital migration process and facilitating the rollout of the infrastructure. As a result, Zambia only partially met the ITU in June 2015 deadline for digital takeover by commencing simultaneous transmission of both analog and digital TV, leading to the country not to meet its target by 30th December deadline in the migration program. Then there's also lack of capacity to repay the loan. The repayment of the loan obtained from the Exim Bank of China for the implementation of the digital migration has been a challenge for ZNBC, as the corporation has no capacity to pay back the loan. Then there's also lack of funds to complete the construction of the 8 provincial studios, as well as supply and installation of equipment for provincial studios. Equipment that became faulty during the defect liability warrant period could not be repaired due to the non-payment of outstanding amounts owed in the completed works.
So then, what are the recommendations and the way forward? So we think that government should ensure timely allocation of funds to complete the remaining works, which include the construction of the 8 provincial studios as well as installation of equipment at provincial studios. This intervention will result into the following. 1, avoid wastage of government resources that have already been pumped into the project. For example, for projects that are already at 90% of completion. It will also enable government to reduce the dilapidation of the already constructed structures. It will also resolve the security concerns on the already installed equipment. It will also resolve the concerns on the retention of the project. That means the rectification of faults under defects, liability, or warrant period. It will also help resolve the warehouse cost of civil works and equipment not installed. It will help resolve concerns of both infrastructure and broadcasting equipment becoming obsolete due to non-use and continued storage in the warehouse. The Ministry of Information and Media considers reviewing the policy. This review should now focus on 2 key areas. A, engaging with the industry stakeholders, including broadcasters, technology providers, and consumers, so that they can gather input and ensure policy addresses the needs and concerns. B, placing the renewed emphasis on achieving digital audio broadcasting. This will align with the global trends and enhance the quality and accessibility of audio broadcasting services. Also, the ongoing review of the Independent Broadcasting Authority Act should take into consideration the reviewed policy. In terms of conclusion, the the digital migration process in Zambia, as guided by the digital migration policy and influenced by international standards, has made notable strides, yet also faces some significant challenges. So the legal and regulatory frameworks established under the 2014 digital migration policy have provided a solid foundation for transitioning from analog to digital broadcasting, particularly with the structural changes such as separation of content and signal distribution. The completion status of various provincial studios reflects substantial progress, though with incomplete elements that hinders full implementation. The benefits outlined in the International Telecommunication Union Geneva 2006 resolution, particularly in terms of increased broadcast services and improved frequency spectrum efficiency, have begun to materialize, showcasing the importance of digital migration to enhance communication access in the country. However, financial constraints, uncompleted construction works, and equipment malfunctions jeopardize these advancements and continue to hinder the desired objectives of digital migration program. Moving forward, it is imperative that the government has to prioritize funding and resource allocation to finalize the construction of provincial studios and facilitate the installation of necessary equipment. These actions will not only help capitalize on the investments already made, but will also further avert further wastage of resources and ensure that the digital migration ambitions can fully be realized. By addressing these pressing issues, Zambia can work towards a more efficient and comprehensive digital broadcasting landscape that serves the needs of its population and aligns with global standards. Chair, we submit.
On the challenges, C, lack of capacity to repay the loan. In the recommendation, you haven't mentioned anything. How do we come out of this issue? Because we expected you to give a solution rather than just leaving it hanging. What happened? They should sell off the NBC, or what's the recommendation on it here?
I think the ministry as well as ZNBC ought to work together in finding resource mobilization measures so that they work more efficiently and mobilize resources to be able to pay the loans. I think we are still, in one way or the other, paying fees to ZNBC, and of course ZNBC has a number of activities where they can raise resources, and for that fact it is important that we should understand that a loan at any point we must always think that we should be able to repay. So it is always important that they draw up a plan of how resources are going to be mobilized and negotiate with the bank in terms of how well this loan can be settled in case certain modes of payment will not be efficient for them. What I mean is that if it means restructuring part of the loan that is owed to Afro-Exim Bank, they can actually do that to ensure that they have a breather in terms of the way they can be able to pay that loan.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. But you know that the money went into the infrastructure and there have been no man, that TV levy is just negligible. It's not enough even to cover their needs. So why didn't you just say the government should pay this loan? Is it a problem or what? Because we are going round and round. But what is the solution? Because Otherwise, it will just remain like that, and it's accumulating interest every day. Okay, maybe we can leave that one. Then we didn't comment on the poor radio and the TV network in rural areas and what can be done. I don't know whether you as researchers, I assume you move around and you look at my constituents more very there. They are watching Namibia TV, they are listening to Radio Botswana, they are listening to Radio Namibia, because the frequency here doesn't reach less. It just ends up somewhere in Livingston there. But to the other side, there's virtually nothing. They can't listen to Zambia, Radio Zambia, or even the Parliamentary TV. There are no signals. This is something which you should have researched on. Over to you, Dr.
I think, Honorable, it all hinges on investments in the infrastructure. In as much as we have done some works in terms of improving our infrastructure status, we have not fully expanded so much into the rural areas to ensure that accessibility of digital services is actually accessed. So this is something that government can actually look into by ensuring that they work hand in hand with the Ministry of Information and Media, Science and Technology, as well as ZICTA, to ensure that these underserved areas, the network is actually improved.
There's an allocation of more towers, so we are hoping those towers, other than them just going to network providers like for telephones, there should also be consideration to see how through those particular allocations there should be need for more funding then to ensure that coverage is improved, especially in the underserved communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but now if we are talking about those towers, for me I've got a different view, because if you look at those towers, they are very massive, and the coverage area is very little. You as the researcher, why can't you come up with a good recommendation to government? Maybe think of the latest technology by using satellite. Look for Uganda, they have launched a satellite in space, and that is, we can tap from there for the easy communication. If you look at what is happening now in other rural areas like my constituents, we have got Starlink. Starlink doesn't need a tower. Now those massive towers, they are heavy to transport, heavy to install. Some places it's not accessible, they are too rural, can't even reach there, and their coverage area also is limited. Why can't we think of other alternatives to towers such that you advise the government, because you are researchers?
Chair, you have rightly put it. In countries where the digital systems have improved, in most of these countries where they have almost 100% coverage, they have actually resorted to satellite. And I think that is the way to go, but I'm sure it all hinges on resources and prioritization in terms of the cost-benefit analysis in terms of the situation probably the country might be in. So I think truly that would be the way to go. If you look at the country I've mentioned, Uganda, nearly many remote areas in the country have access to digital services. I think for Kenya they have been moving slowly, but they have actually covered nearly all the underserved areas, and everyone else, whether you are in your village, you have access to both radio and TV services without any problem. That is internet inclusive.
Okay, thank you very much. Member,
Sure.
yeah.
Just trying to find out the real problem, because in many of these border towns, predominantly you would find that the TV, the radio signal is mostly from other countries, not from Zambia. You go to Siavonga, you find the Zimbabwe has dominance. You go to Livingstone, you find Zimbabwe has a bit of dominance, and also Namibia and Botswana. You go to the same area like Mandi, Sesheke, similar. What is the problem that is making that to happen?
Thank you, Honorable. The biggest problem is about the strength of our digital services. Our colleagues, I think even before we moved from analog to digital, a long time ago when I was young, in Kasama, I would be listening to a radio in Tanzania instead of getting to Radio 1. So it's about the strength of our signal, and that reflects in terms of our capacity to cover most of these areas. So you find that there's a presence of a signal, but that signal is not strong enough to cover all the areas in the particular locality.
Okay, thank you very much. Lola, or you want to add?
I think in addition, it's also content. Also, preference comes in terms of content. You realize that when you come to our own broadcasters, NBC, other than you listening to the news and ask the people that news smooth talk when there's nothing else to really listen to. Like there's nothing. You'll be there viewing old movies. So also content is an issue with our broadcaster. That also has an effect on what people view. And also, even when it comes to DSTV, remember, like when it comes to multi-choice, some of the content that they would give us here might be different from what they're giving us in South Africa and Botswana. So you realize even some people, while they're even within the country, they prefer to have a connection of multi-choice, the one from South Africa or the one from Namibia, as opposed to the local one in Zambia, because also content then plays a major part on what people also just prefer.
I think all what we can say is that can government be able to prioritize and look for money to sort of complete the works that are remaining in the three provinces that have been highlighted? Almost above 80% completion. If left unattended to, we might actually land ourselves into much more higher cost than the initial cost that we intended. So it is our plea that through you, Chair, and your committee, that would be one of an area that we might urge government to ensure that we quickly complete this process so that the implementation comes into full swing.